of all reality and beyond, essentially.
Ehrlich.
So this
The Liebnis Jun Allah.
wanted to start with this song I was playing, but it's really just talking. Anyway,
Das ist der Schiff von
we're approaching the seventh day of the month of Cheshvan, which is pretty intense because it's a day that they would start praying for rain back in ancient time. And it represents like a new time of the year. Really, we just had the Jewish New Year in the past month of Tishrei for a whole month. Then we started the next month called the month of Cheshvan, which really doesn't have any holidays. So it's like the idea of our service to the Creator to go throughout the year. And this day that we have now, pretty much, actually it's really in a couple days, but still, the 7th of Cheshvan. It's just like getting set in the year, which is should be like a year of Torah. So anyway, we have here a book of the Bavitch Rebbe wrote called the Likutei sichos, the book of edited talks, and it's pretty intense. So let's just dive right into it, I guess. So this talks about, it's a commentary on the Torah, essentially. So I wanted to start from the beginning that talks about the book of Genesis. This is actually a very intense idea because this is like, oh man, this sicha that it's talking about is talking about how the Jewish people have an eternal right to the land of Israel, and how that's alluded to in the very beginning of the Torah. So this is very key for not only modern times, but eternal times, which exist throughout of all history and beyond history. So yeah, let's get right to it. So it says, try to focus. Brutal. Hopefully there's enough light, relatively speaking. It says, we've already spoken many times that the explanation of Rashi, the commentator Rashi, medieval times commentator named Rashi, on the Torah, even though that he comes to explain the simple meaning of the verses, like Rashi himself writes many times. So Rashi is a medieval commentator whose job is to explain the simple meaning of the Torah. So it says, we've explained many times that even though Rashi explains the simple meaning, what he's already said many times, and even in the beginning of the Torah, or like we say many times, like Rashi says in his commentary that I only come to explain the simple meaning of the Torah. But sometimes Rashi also consists of wondrous matters of the Torah, very intense things that seemingly are kind of beyond the simple meaning as well. From the other parts of the Torah, besides for the simple meaning, even Rashi even contains the secrets of the Torah sometimes, not only a simple meaning, but even secrets. Like it's basically, like it says, the Alter Rebbe says, the leader of Chabad, the first leader of Chabad says that the explanation of Rashi on the 5 books of Moses is the wine of the Torah. Not only is Rashi simple meaning of the Torah, but Rashi is also the wine of the Torah, the secrets. Wine metaphorically represents the secrets of the Creator. So it's not only a simple meaning, but it's also the wine of the Torah. Rather, it's only that in order that we can der Grundreven sich zu dienen, in order that we should in order for us to recognize and learn the wondrous parts of Rashi, basically. So Rashi has simple meaning. He also has deeper Kabbalistic meanings. In order for us to get to the deeper meanings, welcome to our new people who just joined, and to the wine of the Torah in Rashi, we first must learn through and understand the simple meaning of Rashi. So Rashi, medieval rabbi, contains all kinds of secrets to the Torah, or it really is the simple meaning of the Torah, but he also has secrets to the Torah. But in order to get to the secrets that we want to get to, we first have to get to the simple meaning of Rashi, basically. So, which val oich zai, even even the simple meaning, even the deeper meanings of the Torah, Rashi has rein gestellt in dem Pirush Leut Pshutas Bikkur. Even the deeper meanings of the Torah, Rashi himself hides within the simple meaning. So really, the Torah has the simple meaning that the Rashi comes along to say. But there's really a lot of deeper Kabbalisticalized secrets in Rashi. But he hides those secrets inside of the simple meaning. So, basically, and we can say that, so, so Rashi, when Rashi started writing his commentary on the Torah, he did not write a unique introduction to the Torah. Other people, sometimes when they write the Torah, before their commentary, they first write this lengthy introduction, like what is the Torah, basically, like why am I coming to explain the Torah. But Rashi starts out with his commentary right away. He does not write a unique introduction to the Torah. Is the Savara B'chayav. So we should think, because of that Rashi really hinted to in the first explanation of the Torah, the beginning. So really, Rashi wrote the beginning. He just started writing his commentary in the beginning of the Torah right away. So the first thing he writes in his explanation, even though it's not an official preface, but it says we can say that even though it's not official, it must be that Rashi hinted some kind of introduction to the entire Torah in his first thing that Rashi said. So the first thing Rashi says, is that Rabbi Isaac says in the Torah that Lo hayat tzarich, the Torah did not need to begin with the creation of the universe like it does. The Torah begins in the beginning. The Creator made the heavens and the earth, and the whole story of creation in 6 days, rest on the seventh, and it's about story about Adam and the flood of Noah, and then how the Creator singled out Abraham and chose Avraham and the people of Yisrael forever, and gave Avraham the land of Yisrael as an eternal inheritance, which is this week's parsha, basically. And then the other parts of the book of Genesis, where not only did he choose Abraham, but Abraham also had Ishmael and Isaac, and he chose Isaac from within those two. And then Isaac himself also had Esav and Yaakov and Jacob, and within those two, the Torah in Genesis explains at length how the Creator chose Jacob. So the Creator chose Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to give them the land of Israel forever and to choose them forever. And then it talks about how the Jews went down to Egypt. And then the beginning of the book of Exodus talks about how the Jews were enslaved in Egypt for about 210 years. And then at the very end of that enslavement, within a couple days of them about to leave, finally the Jewish people are given the first official commandment as a nation by the Creator, which it talks about in the Torah. But the point is that this Rabbi Yitzchak, in the Talmud says that the entire Torah should have skipped all that beginning stuff of the Genesis and the beginning of the book of Exodus. The Torah should have started all the way already towards the middle of the book of Exodus, where the Jewish people were about to leave Egypt and the Creator started giving the first commandment. All the other stuff should not have been the beginning of the Torah, according to the what we may understand initially of what the Torah is. Because really the Torah is a book of laws. So really, if the Torah means book of laws, so it should have started with the first law that the Jewish people were commanded officially as a nation. And it should not have talked about all this other history and other stories that happened before. So that's what the Rabbi Yitzchak says. And this is what Rashi references in the beginning of the Torah. So that's what he said. Really, it shouldn't have, maybe, but it did. Rather, the Torah should not have started except from the first commandment the Jewish people got when they left Egypt. And what is the reason why it started with the creation of the world? You have to stay tuned for that. But the point is that through the fact that Rashi mentioned this, unterstreichen dem Seder, as freer hearts come to Bereshit, the fact that Rashi first mentioned this is basically trying to tell us something. So the fact that the Torah really starts out with the creation of the world, in actuality, it starts out with the creation of the world, and then it talks about later the first commandment that the Jewish people got. So why is that basically? And then Rashi later explains why the Torah begins with the beginning of the world, and through Rashi explaining that, Rashi is really giving us an introduction to the Torah. And what does Rashi actually say, by the way? He mentions this parenthetically here, even though it's mentioned at length other places, and also here as we'll see. But again, the reason that Rashi writes why the Torah actually begins with the creation of the world is because if the nations of the world would falsely claim to the people of Yisrael that they are thieves, that they have stolen because they stole the land of the 7 Canaanite nations that lived there for a few hundred years before. But really, I mean, this is like Rashi says, that's what the other nations of the world might mistakenly think. So Rashi says, based on this other commentary, that that's why the Creator began the Torah with the creation of the universe. This is in the beginning of the Torah, for those wondering in the comments. The very beginning of the Torah starts out with the creation of the world. And Rashi, the commentator, says that the only reason why the Torah actually begins with the creation of the universe is just in case the nations of the world might mistakenly claim that the Jewish people stole the land of the 7 Canaanite nations. Therefore, the Torah begins right away as an eternal testimony for all the world that with the creation of the world and the story of Genesis, how the Creator singled out Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to give them the land of Israel forever, to teach them that, first of all, the Creator made all of the land. Since the Creator created the land, all land, from absolutely nothing, then He can give the land to whoever He wants. And He can also take it away from whoever He wants. And we know throughout the rest of the Torah parts, in the beginning part of the Torah, that it includes that the Creator initially, first of all, the Creator initially wanted to give it to the Jewish people, but He didn't at first. He allowed temporarily the 7 Canaanite nations to live there, which essentially was about 440 years. But then, even though that was happening, but the Creator told Abraham, don't worry, even though the Canaanites living here, I've already given you this land. So the Creator gave the land to Abraham, even though He allowed the Canaanite nations to live there. But the same Creator that made the whole universe gave the land to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob as an eternal inheritance. So it says that Rashi says that's the entire reason why the book of Genesis was included in the Torah, at least at the beginning of the Torah, because in order to tell us, first of all, that the Creator owns the world, so He's the landlord, He's the Lord of the land. And then since He's the landlord, then the rest of the book of Genesis talks about how the Creator gave the land of Israel to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob forever, and essentially. So that's like the whole reason, according to Rashi's introduction, why the Torah even includes the book of Genesis at all, essentially. And this is an eternal, I mean, this week's Torah portion talks at length about how the land of Israel is an eternal inheritance for the Jewish people that the Creator Himself already gave Abraham. Not only did the Creator already give Abraham the 7 Canaanite nations that Moses later, or that Joshua, Moses' disciple, later conquered for the Jewish people, but He also gave Abraham the other lands that are only going to be fully given when the Messiah comes. But even before that, the Jewish people still own the lands always because of the eternal inheritance and the eternal covenant that the Creator made with Abraham that will never be broken, because the Creator is beyond change. The Creator made a promise. He will never forsake his promise. So that, according to Rashi, that's the entire reason why the book of Genesis is even in the Torah. Just in case the nations might mistakenly, I don't know why they would even think that. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. But just in case, there might be a time where some radicals might mistakenly think, based on their own mistaken perception, that the Jewish people stole the land. Just in case, the Torah says, don't worry, you don't have to think that, because we have an eternal testimony for the whole world that the Creator made the universe. He gave it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Jewish people, forever, and it can never be taken away. And the reason why it's justified is because the Creator owns the world, because He created it from nothing. So He can give and take the land to who He wants. He gave it temporarily to the Canaanite nations, but then He gave it permanently to the Jewish people, such that it can never be taken away. So that's what essentially Rashi says at the very first comment, even though he doesn't mention an official introduction to the Torah like other commentators do. But the fact that this is the first thing that he actually says in his commentary, that itself is like an introduction to the entire Torah, as we'll hopefully see. Okay, where are we even? We're somewhere around here. Yeah, so this is like an introduction to the Torah. That the first thing that we need to learn is the simple meaning of the Torah, which is essentially. Okay, I guess now he's explaining some deeper meaning. The first thing we need to learn in the Torah is the simple meaning of the Torah, which is to learn the beginning of the creation, which is the simple meaning of the creation of the world, and only afterwards we can come to the deeper meanings in the Torah and the wine of the Torah, which were given later to the Jewish people, which was the first commandment and first holiness in the world. Essentially, we said that Rashi is the commentator is the simple meaning of the Torah, but he really includes within himself deeper meanings of the Torah called the wine of the Torah, which is the deeper Kabbalisticalized meanings of the Torah. But first, it says we should learn the simple meaning of Rashi, and then afterwards we could come to the deeper meanings in Rashi. And it says not only that, but Rashi himself hints to this idea with his first comment, that he says, the fact that he says this idea that really the Torah should have started with the first commandments of the Jewish people, but really it started with the creation of the world, in case the nations would mistakenly say all that stuff, that the Jewish people were thieves, so that's why the Creator begins with creation, to teach us that no. But the Torah, but really there's still a thought to think that we should start with the first commandment of the Torah. So really Rashi is telling us the order of learning Torah. This idea helps us learn a lesson, learning Torah, that first, even though we should think, okay, maybe the first commandment of the Torah we should just get to right away, because that's like the whole point of the world is to have commandments that draw holiness into the world. So we should think, okay, what's the point of like learning about the creation of the world? Like, who needs the world? The main thing is that we have commandments in the world. So we'll start with the commandments. But no, Rashi, the fact that this comment to Rashi says that even though you might think that we should start with the first idea of holiness in the world, the Torah first starts with the actual basic creation of the world without the holiness in it, and only later it has like the deeper commandments of the holiness. So that's also like the order of how we should learn Torah. First, we learn the Torah in the simple meaning, and then like through that we can come afterwards to the deeper meaning, basically. So, and the question of Rashi, when he says the Torah should not have began except with the first commandment that the Jewish people received later, the Ramban, a different commentary, also asks that question. Ramban asks as like a, not like refutation, but like as a question on like why Rashi is saying this, essentially. Meaning like Rashi, according to Rashi, the Torah should not have even mentioned creation at all. Someone said in the comments, "Is this pre-recorded and on a loop?" The answer is not yet, but it will be one day, maybe. Yeah. So really, according to Rashi, we shouldn't have even had the creation of the world at all. Like the Torah should not have even mentioned creation of the world. But the Ramban asks like an interesting question. Like, what do you mean we should not have even mentioned creation? Like, why would the Torah not mention creation? But it says because the creation, it says in the beginning, the Creator made the universe, is the Shorish Hamuna. That is the source of the faith that we have in the Creator. The idea of creation, as opposed to the universe always existed, is not good. It is good, meaning the foundation of everything in the Torah is to know that the world was actually created, and not that it always existed. So really, the Torah should have mentioned it, not because it needs to talk about history, but because this is like one of the main things to know the world is created. When there, and someone who does not believe that the world was created, but rather if they mistakenly think that the universe just always existed, that person is a heretic, and he denies the main thing. He denies the Creator, and with this he's not able to follow the entire Torah. So not only is the creation of the universe the first thing that happened, but like the Torah is not really a history book, but the creation of the universe is the most important thing that we should know in part of our belief. Because if someone does not believe in creation, then there's no basis for the rest of the entire Torah. How can we say that the Torah itself should not have began with the creation of the world? Rather, it should have only began a lot later with the first commandment that the Jewish people got. And how could the Ramban say, how could it be that we could have the Torah without the Torah ever mentioning that the world was created? I mean, according to the simple meaning of Rashi saying that the Torah should have just talked about commandments. It should not have even mentioned the creation of the universe at all. And then we wouldn't even know how the world exists, essentially. Maybe people could think later that it always existed. So Ramban says, how could it be that we could have a Torah that would not even mention creation? It doesn't make sense, because the whole foundation of the belief in everything is to know that the world was actually created. So really, how can it be that what is exactly Rashi saying? That the Torah should have only began later with the first laws and not mention creation? What exactly is the thing? So too is, we can also ask, even regarding the stories in the part of the Torah which is before the first commandment. No, so the simple meaning of Rashi is just saying like, okay, the Torah should not have mentioned the creation of the world, but maybe it could have mentioned other stuff. But no, saying like, when the Rashi says that, meaning the Torah should have began already at the first commandment, in the entire first book of Genesis, and part of Exodus should not have been there. So regarding the stories that are in the beginning of the Torah, like the first part of Exodus and the book of Genesis, even in the yeah, so according to Rashi, not only should the creation of the universe not have been included in the Torah, but also all of the other stories that the Torah mentions after creation until the first commandment, as well as all the stories that happened beside the Torah afterwards, besides for the first commandment. It says those stories really maybe should not have been mentioned, but no, it says really all the stories of the Torah have all kinds of lessons and things that we can learn from them. They have all kinds of heroes, lessons for every Jew and everyone in general, or other people learning them as well. So the Torah also could have included them just for those lessons. Now, how could it? So what is Rashi's question? It says the Torah really should have only began with the first commandment, but what about all the other stories that teach us lessons, etc.? We should have had that as well. And Yeah, so according to Rashi, so the whole reason why the creation of the world and all the other stories in the book of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus exist in the Torah are only in order to answer the nations of the world with their mistaken claim that in case they would mistakenly say that the Jewish people stole the land of Israel, so we should tell them, we should tell them these things. The simple meaning is we should tell him the Creator made the world and He created it so He can give it to whoever He wants. But according to that, Rashi says really the Torah should have began on not with creation, but already skipping the entire first book of Genesis. That means that the entire first book of Genesis and the beginning of the book of Exodus are really just coming in order to help us answer to the nations of the world with that claim. So how is it that those other stories, besides for creation, help us answer the claim of the nations of the world when they mistakenly make that mistake? So this question is even stronger. Meaning the question of how could Rashi even say that we should leave out all of the stories of the book of Genesis up until that commandment, and how exactly do those other stories even answer? Even according to the answer that the reason why they're there is in order to answer the nations of the world. How exactly do those other stories even answer the nations of the world more than creation? So this question is even stronger. It says there are. There's in the book of Rashi says really the Torah should have started with the first commandments the Jewish people were commanded, but in the book of Genesis there's a lot of commandments that are already mentioned, like it says by Adam and Eve, you should be fruitful and multiply. That's a commandment that's actually relevant. So that's not just nothing. That's an actual commandment. And also in this week's parsha, Abraham was commanded to circumcise himself, which is the source of how the Jewish people circumcise themselves nowadays. So that's also another commandment. And another commandment not to eat the synatic nerve for the Jewish people, which is mentioned later in Genesis. So there's different commandments that are mentioned. How can we say that the Torah should have began with the first commandment that was already mentioned to the entire Jewish people later in the middle of Exodus? Meaning Rashi says, this should have been the first commandment that the Jewish people were commanded as a whole nation, which was already after these other commandments that were made to other people. But why is that? There's already other commandments that if the Torah would have started there with only that first commandment, then how would we know about these other commandments that are mentioned in the book of Genesis, basically? So the book of Genesis mentions a lot of commandments. How would we know about the other things? It says regarding circumcision, really, in the book of Leviticus, it says on the 8th day you should circumcise the child. But the other commandments, such as be fruitful and multiply, and not eating the synatic nerve, they're only written in Genesis, and the source for those commandments are only in Genesis. So every commandment that we have has to have a source in the verses of the Torah. So if the book of Genesis would not have been written, then how would we have the source for those two commandments of be fruitful and multiply and not eating the synatic nerve? It says in another commentary called the Gur Aryeh, it says that if the Torah would have began with the first commandment that the Jewish people were commanded with, then the other commandments would have also been written differently. So according to that commentary of Rashi, is saying not only should the Torah have begun with the first commandment, but the actual verses in the Torah some verses should have been added that weren't added there. But then that's not the simple meaning of what Rashi is saying. Rashi is saying that the Torah, as it stands now, with the same words, should have existed, except just not the first book of the Torah and not the beginning of Exodus. But after that, all the other verses should still be the same. That's the simple meaning. But another commentary says, according to Rashi, maybe the Torah should have added extra verses to tell us about that. But that's not the simple meaning of the simple explanation. So we still have some questions, basically, which is good, because questions help us get answers. Without questions, essentially, there's no answers. So we need questions. I think the screen is kind of fuzzy. Don't you notice a little fuzz or something? So I'm just going to try to wipe it off. But it's all good, deep down. Is that better? Whatever. Kind of about the same. I don't know why it's just like not even. It's kind of blurry. Whatever. It's all good. Good job. So basically, how could Rashi say that the Torah should just skip all these other commandments in Genesis? This was which the Torah writes. All of the passages until the first commandment of the Jewish people, which is in the book of Exodus later. The fact that the Torah actually writes the book of Genesis, etc. Rashi says that the reason for this is because oh man, this blurriness is brutal. It says Rashi again. This is I'm saying as the question for why the Torah starts not only with the creation of the world, but also why the Torah includes all of the other stories afterwards in the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus. Rashi says the entire reason for that is just because the Creator told us the power of His actions. He told to His nation, the power the Creator has is what He told to us, and that power is to give to them the inheritance of nations, which means that this is like the power the Creator has to give to the Jewish people the inheritance that other nations had. Because if the nations of the world would falsely claim to Yisroel that you're thieves because it says you have conquered the lands of the 7 nations, which were the Canaanite nations living in the land of Israel at the time. But the Jewish people could say back to them, the entire universe, oh man, this is so blurry. The entire universe belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He. He created it and gave it to whoever it's befitting in His eyes to give it to. And with His will, He gave it to them. And with His will, He took it from them and gave it to us. The same will the Creator had that allowed the Canaanite nations to live there temporarily for a few hundred years. So that same will, even a greater will, technically, the same will of the Creator, though, He took it from them and gave it to us. So the same Creator of the universe has the ability to do that. That's the power He has, because He made the universe. And all the stories of the Torah in Genesis, and even the beginning of Exodus, all those stories help us understand how that is exactly. Even this is hard to understand. Or also this is hard to understand. The main point of the explanation that the entire universe belongs to the Creator is because He created it. Oh man, I don't know why it gets so blurry. Anyone know why it gets blurry like this? Okay. Which is for us that's clear to us. The fact that He created the universe is clear for everyone reading the Torah right at the beginning of the book of Genesis, where it says He created the universe. Since that's so, why does the Torah also need to have all these other passages between creation and the first commandment? Really, the Torah begins with the first with the creation of the universe, and afterwards, the entire book of Genesis says a lot of other stories that's after creation. But Rashi says the whole reason why the Torah should not have began with the first commandment of the Jewish people, which was already a lot later, is just because in order for us to know that the Creator made the world, so He owns the world and He can give it to whoever He wants. But we already know that the Creator made the world just from the first commandment, just from the first verse of the Torah, which is not even a commandment, just the fact that He said He created the world. So really, maybe the Torah could have said, okay, He created the universe. And then the Torah could have skipped all the other stories of Genesis and just skipped right away to the Jewish people getting the first commandment. So what's the point of the other stories, according to Rashi, in the Torah? How do those help us understand the main point, which is that the Creator made the world? It already says in the first verse, in the beginning, He created the heavens and the earth. So that simply is enough. And another question, what exactly consists of the answer to the nations? What exactly is the answer to the nations of the world. We find that initially, when Noah had divided up the earth to his sons, the land of Israel, was in the portion of his son Shem. And where is that mentioned? That's mentioned in Rashi in Ars Parsha, and based on the other verses, that Noah himself divided up the land of the world and gave the land of Israel to Shem, who was the ancestor of the Jewish people. Oh man, this is so blurry. It's kind of brutal. One day we'll get a better way of learning this somehow. The point is that Noah, after the flood, divided up the universe, divided up the world, and gave the land of Israel to his son Shem. And after Noah gave the land of Israel to his son Shem, when they were dividing up the land, then the sons of Canaan, who are the children of Noah's other son, Ham, who did not originally get the land of Israel, they were the ones who were trying to conquer it. Basically, it says in this week's Parsha that the Canaanites were in the land when Abraham went there, because the sons of Canaan, who was the grandson of Noah's son Ham, who was a different son besides for Shem, they were conquering it from the descendants of Shem. But Noah's son Shem, who the ancestor of the Jewish people, he's the one who originally had the land. And the Canaanites, the descendants of Ham, are the ones who were conquering it, essentially. So, if that's the case, so how could the other nations even think of claiming to the Jewish people that they stole the land from the Canaanites, when really it was theirs originally, since the time of Shem? Like, what are these guys even thinking, basically? How could these other nations even mistakenly claim that you're thieves because you conquered the land of the 7 nations of Canaan? Like, I mean, yes, it's a mistake, but how could they even think of that mistake, is the question. At the same time that the land of Israel had initially only belonged to the children of Shem, who was who was Noah's son, that he gave the land to, who's the ancestors of the Jewish people. And the Canaanites, the children of Noah's other son, who did not originally get the land, they're the ones who had stole the land from the sons of Shem. So what are these other guys even thinking, basically? Let me just reopen it because it's kind of lagging. Maybe. Okay. Oh, I don't know how long it was muted for. One of the commentaries said, okay, the nations of the world were claiming they stole the land, but how could they even think they stole the land? Because it belonged to Shem, who was Noah's son, who Noah gave the land of Israel to originally, and the Jewish people are descended from Shem, so it's just theirs initially. So one commentator says, oh, maybe the nations would claim that the Jewish people did not give the other descendants of Shem the land. But that's not the implication of Rashi at all, because Rashi says that the nations are claiming not that they stole it from other nations, but that they stole it from the Canaanite nations, from the 7 nations. It says the nations are claiming he stole it from the 7 nations. Basically, Shem was given the land by Noah. And then later, Noah's other son, Ham, his descendants, the Canaanites, stole it from the descendants of Shem, essentially. So when Rashi says that the nations were claiming the Jewish people stole the land from the 7 nations, it does not imply at all that anyone else is claiming about the other descendants of Shem, basically. And then, yeah, I mean, the land doesn't mention it doesn't mention the fact that the promise that was given to Abraham was specifically to Abraham and not the other descendants of Shem, and within Abraham to Isaac and Jacob as well. But we'll get to that maybe. Point is, and what does thievery even mean? It says that other nations would claim that they stole the land, but what does it mean to even steal something? Thievery is so the other Canaanites are the ones who stole the land from the descendants of Shem, who are the ancestors of the Jewish people. So thievery is one of the 7 commandments of Bnei Noach. There's basically 7 universal commandments of morality for all of humanity. People think that the Torah is only for the Jewish people, but there's part of the Torah called the 7 Noahide laws that really are laws and commandments that apply to all of humanity. Adam, the Rambam in the Law of Kings, chapters 10 and on, talks about how the Maimonides. No, the Rambam is the Maimonides. Rambam talks about how Adam, the first man, was commanded with 6 commandments at the beginning of creation. And at the times of Noah, after the flood, there was a 7th commandment that was added. So there's the concept of 7 commandments that apply to all of humanity. Like, to only worship one creator, not to blasphemize the name of the creator. One of those commandments is not to steal. So thievery is one of the commandments that's basic humanity, basically. And this is the whole reason why, the main reason why the people were drowned in the flood is because they were stealing. And if we say that conquering something through war, like it was in the times of Joshua, who conquered the land of Israel, then if conquering is the same thing as theft, then we have a question. How could we how can we find that there's nowhere in the Torah anywhere where it mentions that there's any kind of punishment for any nation anywhere for conquering one land from another nation? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that there's any prohibitions or any punishments for conquering land. And it says even King David, who conquered many lands that are not part of Eretz of land of Israel before, we don't say any punishments for that. So basically, the Torah talks about all kinds of conquering lands from other nations, and I mean, the Torah doesn't mention any kind of punishments that's implied for conquering land through a war. It doesn't say it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that's like punishable because of thievery. Therefore, in simple meaning of the Torah, I mean, simply speaking, it says that conquering through a war is not at all in the category of thievery, and it lacks the entire foundation of the claim of the nation say that you're thieves because you conquered the land. So how can these people say that Jewish people are thieves for conquering the land if there's no punishment anywhere that's mentioned for conquering land through a war? It doesn't say if conquering was actual thievery, then it would be totally forbidden. But there's no punishment that's mentioned anywhere in the Torah for any nation, anywhere, for conquering land through a war. So it must be that conquering land through a war is not considered thievery at all, not even a little bit. So how could these other nations claim the Jewish people stole it because they conquered it, which implies just regular form of acquisition. So let's see what it says. Also, in this answer for the claims of the nations of the world, which you say the whole world belongs to the Creator who gave, and He gave it to us, that requires additional explanation. First of all, why does Rashi stress in his answer that the entire world belongs to the Creator? Really, the whole claim of the nations is not about the entire world. It's only about the land of the 7 nations of Canaan. So really, the nations are only really the nations don't care about the other part of the world. The nations are claiming the Jewish people stole just these 7 lands of the Canaanites. So in Rashi's answer, Rashi says, because we should say to them that the entire world belongs to Hashem. But why do we care about the entire world if the whole point is only about the land of Israel? Why are we even mentioning to the nations that the entire world belongs to the Creator, therefore He gave us this one land? All that matters is that this land belongs to the Creator. Why are we mentioning the entire world? And the continuation of the answer, where the Rashi says that the entire world belongs to Him, and He gave it to whoever it's befitting in His eyes. With His goodwill, He gave it to them, and with His will, He gave it to them. With the same will, He gave it to us. So what it says? Why does He say that He gave it? No, okay, sorry. The first thing Rashi says is the entire world belongs to Hashem, and He gave it to whoever it's befitting to give it to in His eyes. Then He says, with His will, He gave it to them, and with His will, He took it from them and gave it to us. So Rashi basically says He gave it to whoever it's befitting to give it to in His eyes. Okay, so what? I think it's asking why does it need to say afterwards? He gave it to who it's befitting to give it to in His eyes. Really, the main part is the part where He says the whole world belongs to Hashem. And that's the main thing He needs to say. Since the whole land belongs to Hashem, He has the right to give it to whoever He wants to. So why do we need to say, He gave it to whoever is befitting to in His eyes? It's kind of like extra. And the fact that Rashi also needs to add the words, He created it. He could have just said the whole world belongs to Hashem. That's kind of obvious. But He adds the words, He created the world. And that's seemingly just an explanation for why all the land is His. All the world belongs to the Creator because He's the one who created it. And since the ownership of the Creator on the land is because the fact that He created it, therefore, even after He gave it to the Canaanites, it still remains in His domain, and He's able to take it from them. And similar idea, but not exactly, to the fact that it says that the land belongs to Hashem. Therefore, even after the Jewish people conquered the land of Israel, there's a certain concept that land cannot be sold forever, and after every 50 years, it goes back to the original owners because the land belongs to Hashem. Similar idea, but not exactly the same. And then it says, when the Creator gave it to the Canaanites, He did not give it to them forever, because if so, then how could it return from His gift? So that's kind of like a question. What do you mean? It doesn't matter how long He gave it to them because it still remains in the Creator's domain. But so this is like a question on this other commentary named the Chizkuni says that. But Rashi says something differently because Rashi quotes the verse later in Genesis, which talks about how the Creator gave it in Genesis 15:16, which says in Rashi's commentary to Genesis 15:16, where it talks about how the Creator gave the land of Israel to Abraham, and this was at the time that the Canaanite nations were living there. And he says that, I'm going to wait a few generations to take it from them because their sins have not filled up yet. It says when their sins get to a certain amount, then the Creator says that He's going to take it from them. at that point. But at that time that happened, they did not sin as much yet. So it says that the language that Rashi says that their sins were not filled up at that time in order that they should be sent out from their land. That proves that when the Creator gave it to them, this was actually a complete giving. When the Creator gave it to the Canaanite nations temporarily, that was a complete gift because it says the language of their land. Except that afterwards, he paid them back for their sins, the Canaanites, and took it from them, and took their land from them because of their sins. So the Creator could do that. But we still need the reason. I mean, just the fact that the Canaanite nation sinned really badly, which is why they were sent out. That's not enough of a reason, because we also need the reason that the whole world belongs to the Creator because He created it. Because first of all, if the land is not His, then He doesn't have. Then he does not have permission to pay people back for sinning in the first place. So this is also the reason why He took it from them and gave it specifically to us in a way that it could never be taken away from us, as it's going to say later, in a way that the other nations have absolutely no more rights to that land at all. So, okay, on the one hand, He gave it to the Canaanites as an actual gift. And on the other hand, the Canaanites sinned a lot. And because of their bad sins, the Creator paid them back for that. So He took it away from their land. But we still need the reason, the justification for that. We still need to say that the world belongs to the Creator to be able to do that. Because not only does it need to belong to Him in order for Him to pay back people back for their sins, but it also needs to belong to Him for the reason for why He took it from them in a way that the Canaanite nations have no future rights to the land ever again. If it was just because of their sins, then maybe if they do better, they could get back. But no, this is once the Creator, because of also the reason that it belongs to the Creator, then the other nations, the Canaanite nations, have no more rights to the land at all, ever. So anyway, okay, so now we're saying another question. That really, the fact that the Rashi says that the whole world belongs to the Creator because He created it, really Rashi could have said it in a different order. The Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, and it's His. So why does He say the words, He created it, after He says the whole world is His? Really, Rashi first said the whole world belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He. Only after that, He adds something else. Oh, He created it. It's kind of different. And then after He says He created it, then it says He gave it to who it's befitting to in His eyes. And the fact that so based on that, it implies that the continuation where Rashi says that and He gave it to who it's befitting to give it to in His eyes is like a reason, it is connected to the reason for He created it, as opposed to saying that the fact that it belongs to Him is because He created it. Really, I mean, simply the reason why it belongs to Him is because He created it. So Rashi could have said, oh, He created it, first of all, and because He created it, the land belongs to Him. But no, first He says it belongs to Him, just because. And then He says afterwards, a different idea, He created it and gave it to us befitting to His eyes. So that implies that the idea of Him creating it is a reason mainly for just the fact that He's giving it to whoever's befitting to give it to. But it's not as much of a reason for the fact that He owns it, even though it is. But Rashi kind of words things in a way that the fact that He created it is more of a reason only for the fact that He could give it to whoever He wants, but it doesn't explain fully. If the whole reason for saying that He created it was just to say that He owns it, then Rashi could have said that first, but He really says it after, is the point. And a different question, someone asked, who wrote this? We said in the beginning, live earlier, this is written by the Lubavitcher Rebbe of Chabad, Likutei Sichos, Volume 5, the commentary of the Torah. And with the words, and He gave it to whoever's befitting to give it to in His eyes, Rashi means seemingly the same point that he says later, which is, I mean, this is, first Rashi says He gave it to whoever's befitting to give it in His eyes, but then later He says, with His will, He gave it to them, and with His will, He gave it to us. So seemingly that's the same thing, giving it to whoever's befitting to in His eyes. That's kind of like the same thing as saying later when it says, oh, with His will, He gave it to them, and with His will, He gave it to us. So why does He need to repeat Himself? Rather, it's only, okay, so now saying, oh, maybe first He's saying it in a general way, that the Creator had given the land of Israel to to whoever he wants to, and afterwards he says it more specifically with who he wants to specifically first give it to them, and who he first wanted to give it to them, and then after who he later wanted to give it to them. That's what we could maybe think, but no, is not understood. If that's the reason, why does Rashi need to say two times the same thing? First in a general way and afterwards in a specific way. Okay, I guess the first answer, I guess we're just assuming that he likes saying general and specific. Now, the first answer is, okay, Rashi's just saying generally that he gives it to whoever he wants, and later he's saying specifically who he gives it to. But why does he even need to say generally and specifically? He could just say right away, oh, he gave it to them and gave it to us. What's the point of general and specific? And then the fourth question, these questions are pretty brutal. Hopefully we'll actually get to answer it. In order that we can answer the claim of the nations, which said that you're thieves, is seemingly we only need to know that we only need to know the fact that the Jewish people have the ownership of the land. It's not because the Jewish people conquered the land on their own, rather because the Creator, who owns the entire earth, had given the land to the Jewish people for all. So if that's the whole point of why we should answer the nations of the world, the whole reason is just because the Creator owns the world, because He created it, and He gave it to us, not because we conquered it on our own, but because the Creator gave it to us. So if that's the whole point of the reason, why does Rashi need to tell us, oh, with His will, He gave it to them, which is the Canaanite nations first? Seemingly, that's kind of just extra. Why are we even mentioning that the Creator gave it to the Canaanite nations at all? He could just say, okay, it belongs to us because the Creator gave it to us. Why do we care about what the other people had? And now it's saying Rashi saying that really Rashi is coming to answer a different question people might have, which is not just that they're thieves, but to say why is it that the Creator took away the land from them and gave it to us? And in this, Rashi stresses, since the entire reason that the land of Israel only belonged to the nations was only because the Creator, with His will, gave it to them. Therefore, the Creator automatically has the right to take it from them and give it to us. Meaning, like, the fact that they're actually saying that with His will He gave it to them it's just trying to stress that the only reason why they even had a claim in the first place was just because of the will of the Creator. But that same will could also just be to us. It doesn't actually. I don't know if that answers why, but it's good. Maybe we're gonna say why later. But yeah. But this is, however, kind of difficult to say because the fact that the whole reason why they have it is just because the Creator gave it to them with His will, and that's why Rashi mentions it, and that's the only reason why Rashi would mention that. Because of this, would be on the contrary. Rashi could have written, Rashi did not have to write the fact that the Creator gave it to them with His will. Rather, they would have, so to speak, taken it on their own. Yeah, if Rashi would not have mentioned that, with His will He gave it to the Canaanites, then we would just know that the Canaanites just took it on their own, and then later on the Creator gave it with His will to us. So then the whole reason why they had it was not even from the Creator's will at all. So that would be even a better explanation to the nations of the world. But no, for some reason Rashi does not mention that, and based on what Rashi does mention, he says that the reason why the nations had it first was not because they took it themselves, but the Creator decided that they should have it first. So why is Rashi even mentioning the fact that the Creator, so to speak, gave it to them if they're the ones who took it? And if he would have said nothing, then we would just know that they took it on their own. So why does Rashi add these extra words which kind of seem to contradict what he's saying? That the Creator gave it to them first. Why is that? And a fifth question, with the language of with his will, Rashi means to say that this which the land of Israel previously was given to the seven nations, or previously existed by the seven nations, and afterwards it existed by the Jewish people, the Yidden. It says not only that it's not only because everything that happens in the world happens from Hashem's direction, just like everything else that happens in the world. Rather, it's implying that the fact that the other nations, the seven nations, had the land is not just because everything that happens in the world is directed from the Creator, which is also true, but it implies that there's a specific will that the Creator had for the Canaanite nations to have it, that's unique to them in a way that does not apply to anything else in the world. Really, everything that happens in the world happens only from the Creator deciding it should happen. Like every leaf that blows in the wind is from the Creator. So we can say, okay, maybe when Rashi said, "Oh, with His will He gave it to them," meaning the Creator through the laws of nature, set up the world that would allow them to conquer it, and that's also from the Creator. But no, the fact that Rashi says that with His will He gave it to the Canaanite nations means that there was a unique will that the Creator had, that before the Jewish people should have the land, the Creator had a unique, specific will that the Canaanites should have it. That's unique, meaning it's different from the will that the Creator has, that everything should happen in general. There's a specific reason why the Creator gave it to the Canaanites first. We need to understand, in relation to the when He gave it to us later, it's understood the stress when it says with His will. The Creator gave it to us with His will. Like we find in a lot of places in the Torah, starting with the covenant between the parts, the covenant that was made to Abraham to give him the land of Israel, that's mentioned later in Genesis, which is our parsha, that the Creator had wanted that the land of Israel should be by the Jewish people forever. I guess he's going to quote that. I guess I don't know where he quoted that from, but apparently it's implied somehow. But, however, this which Rashi says with His will regarding the fact that He gave it to the Canaanites is difficult to understand. Where do we find that the Creator had wanted that the descendants of Ham, Noah's other son, should conquer the land of Israel from the descendants of Shem? Again, the land of Israel was originally given to Shem, Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, that all of humanity came from. And the Jewish people are descended from Shem. And Noah originally, after the flood, divided the world and gave the land of Israel to Shem. And then Noah's other sons' descendants, Ham, they conquered it from Shem. So that's similarly what happened. But according to Rashi, it says, with His will, He gave it to them. That's implying that, it's kind of difficult to understand, why was it the Creator's will that the descendants of Ham should conquer the land from the descendants of Shem, and that's like a unique will that's different than the will that He has for everything that in the world happening from His implied. It implies that there was a specific unique plan and a specific unique desire the Creator had for the Canaanite nations to conquer the land from the descendants of Shem before the Jewish people had it. But why is that? It's kind of strange. Now, paragraph 5 on page 7, volume 5 of Likutei sichos says the explanation in all of this, hopefully this will answer everything in just a few seconds. This which the Jewish people are chosen and completely separated from all of the other people regarding the fact that the Jewish people were given unique commandments and the Torah. This was accomplished mainly after the Creator revealed Himself at Mount Sinai. When the Creator revealed Himself at Mount Sinai later in the book of Exodus, that's when the Creator mainly singled out the Jewish people as His chosen nation. Then there was the verse that says in Exodus 19:5 says, "You shall be for me a treasured nation from all the other nations." And in a more general way, the division of the Jewish people, the separation of the Jewish people have from the rest of the nations began when they left Egypt during the Exodus from Egypt. So specifically, one of the Jewish people chosen when the Creator revealed Himself on Mount Sinai to millions of people and spoke Himself these Hebrew words to single them out and separate them from the rest of the nations. But generally, even before that, when they left Egypt, they were separated from the rest of the nations, like it says, like it's. Leaving Egypt is already the beginning and the connection to the giving of the Torah, when they had said, and not only the Exodus of Egypt, but right around the Exodus of Egypt, that's when they were given the first commandment, as a whole, as we mentioned earlier. The commandment was to sanctify the new months. The Jewish months go by the moon, and the moon is at the new month. Basically, every month has either 29 days or 30 days, depending on if witnesses see the new moon on the actual day of the new moon or not. It's kind of complicated, but the point is that's the first commandment the Jewish people got, that they should send witnesses and a court to make sure the witnesses see the new moon. And if they do, then they have to give a special testimony to the court. And if that happens, then the court decides that month has either 29 days or 30 days. Point is, that's the first commandment the Jewish people got when they left Egypt, just like a couple days before they left Egypt, pretty much. So right at the time they were leaving Egypt is when they became a nation, when they were given the first commandment. So that's when they were singled out from all the other nations. And even though that, even also the commandment of, even before they left Egypt, and even before they went to Egypt, they also had other commandments, like circumcision in the times of Abraham. And they also had another commandment not to eat the synatic nerve, which is a certain nerve in animals. They also had that, but that wasn't such a big deal. On these we were commanded those things even before we left Egypt. And they were given, but those commandments were given only to the direct sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but not their descendants. And not even all of the sons, only some of the sons at the time, but not their future descendants. Only the immediate family those commandments were given to. Since the never mind. They were given apparently to all the descendants of them at the time, but not forever, as we're going to see. But since that the commandment of these commandments was not given it was not given as part of the Torah, because the Torah was only given as the Jewish people were leaving Egypt. So they had commandments that were given, but the commandments were not part of the Torah. It comes out that these commandments those commandments that were given to those people, to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the time, they were not officially part of the nation of Yisrael, of Israel at the time. They were essentially just descendants of Noah, and they had a specific, unique category of Noahides at the law. Meaning, we talked about the Jewish people being separated from all the nations, but when did that happen? I mean, Abraham was kind of the first Jew in a certain way, but really the Jewish people were separated from all the other nations at the giving of the Torah, which started at the Exodus from Egypt and a little bit afterwards. But before that, even though we had the forefathers of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they had certain commandments, they were really just a certain type of Noahides at the time, because this was before the Jewish people were separated from all the other nations. Similar to similar to how Esav, who was the son of Isaac, was different than other nations at the time. Similar to, but not exactly the same. But the Jewish people were also different than other people at the time, even though they were not fully the Jewish people yet. But they still had the different unique statuses. So according to this, that the Jewish people only became separated from the other nations when they left Egypt, but not before. According to this, we can understand the difficulties in Rashi, that the Torah, when Rashi says the Torah should have began with the first commandment they were commanded, but we said earlier, oh, what about all the other commandments that it mentions in the beginning of the Torah? Those are also commandments. Why could the Torah not have said that? Because since that the Torah, the Torah is commandments, consists of commandments and instructions. That's what the etymology of the word Torah means, instructions, which are given to the children of Yisrael as Jews. We need to automatically it comes out automatically that the all the previous commandments and instructions that were given, which the when the other quote unquote Jews got those other commandments when they were still Noahides, they had all the other commandments were given. Okay, what was the thing? Yeah, okay, saying really the part of the Torah means instructions, which means the instructions given to the nation of Yisrael. So all the other commandments that the so to speak Jews got before they became official Jews and when they were separated from the rest of the world, when they were still like Noahides, that all maybe could have been given in a different book. The Torah, the Creator did not have to only give us one book. The Creator could have given us like a whole library. He could have said, okay, here's a bunch of stuff that happened to you guys before you were a nation, but then here's the Torah, which is actually only afterwards. So it could have been a different book than the Torah entirely. It didn't have to be part of the Torah. Or it could have just not even been written down. It could have just been like a tradition that we said. Just like the 7 commandments of Noah in general are only a tradition. There was no book. The Creator did not told Noah commandments what to do, and Noah told his sons. But Noah never wrote books. Noah never wrote like his own like Torah scripture or anything like that. So they had traditions of what the Creator wanted them to do. So there also could have been a tradition about the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and other stuff, but it didn't need to be written down as official scripture in the Torah. It should not have. It didn't have to be in the actual Torah book as an instruction for the Jewish nation themselves. Simon said, "Did David call himself Jewish?" Yes, David was Jewish. Jewish became a thing at Mount Sinai after the Jewish people left Egypt, and before they were kind of Jews as well, but they were still mainly Noahides. But they were really Jews after they left Egypt and called the Torah. Okay, now paragraph 6, and this idea. Someone asked the comment, what does King Solomon mean to Jews? King Solomon is the son of King David, and he was a king that had peace in his time, and he's the ancestor of the Messiah. He built the first temple, essentially. Regarding this idea of, maybe the other commandments that the Jewish people got before they left Egypt, they weren't really a nation yet, so it should have been written in a separate book. But no, it was written in the Torah. So Rashi answers why was that the Torah begins with the Genesis, with the creation of the world and the whole book of Genesis, is because of the reason. Is because not just randomly, but because the Torah is actually given a specific instruction to the Jewish people nowadays, which is the instruction is telling them is what they should answer the claim of the nations of the world, who falsely claimed you are thieves because you conquered the land of the 7 nations. So the point is that these stories, all these commandments and stories in the book of Genesis, are not just like telling us history, but Rashi is saying that those are all specific lessons for the sake. And what is the lesson? The lesson is not just the lessons that they contain. I mean, every story in the Torah has certain lessons we can learn from. Rashi is saying that the actual lesson that makes them part of Torah is because they help us answer the claim that the nations have that the Jewish people stole the land of Israel. And that's an instruction to the Jewish people nowadays, even after they became the Jewish people. So it's not just saying that, it's not just like some book of things that happened in the past to a previous category of Jews, but it's saying this is the instructions for the Jews now at this time, essentially. Even though that the conquering of the... Okay, and And so how could the nations even claim that the Jews conquered the land? There's no indication in the Torah anywhere that any nation conquering land through a war is considered theft. And there's no source anywhere that even remotely implies that conquering through a war is theft. So how could the nations even think that the Jewish people stole it, as we mentioned before? But nevertheless, if we did not have the answer that the whole world belongs to the Creator and He can give it to whoever He wants to, then so even the nations would agree that conquering through war is obviously not theft, but they would still claim the Jewish people stole it. Why? Because when the Jewish people took the land of Israel, it's taken out of the domain of all the other nations of the world and only given to the domain of the Jewish people to separate them. Meaning like, yeah. Because not only did the Jewish people conquer it through a war, just like other nations conquer nations through wars, but when the Jewish people got it, they got it in an entirely unique method, not only a unique method, but in a much deeper way, as regular conquering, which only goes from one domain to another domain, as we're going to explain. So regular nations can conquer each other through war. That's not a violation of the prohibition of theft. If it was, then the Torah would have said many places like, oh, do not it would have conquer through war. No, but there's no indication in the Torah when nations conquer each other through a war, that's considered theft. That's just a regular method of acquisition that happens everywhere. But even though the nations understand that, but they would still claim the Jewish people stole the land because the way that the Jewish people have the land is a lot deeper than just a regular old conquest, as we're going to see. When a certain thing goes from one person to another person through I'm trying to understand this thing. So okay, just maybe this. This Yiddish is kind of brutal. Okay, what is exactly this talking about? Okay, when someone said, so don't call it theft when others take it back. I'm not sure if anyone is calling it theft when others take it back because they actually haven't taken it back because the Jewish people just have it. Anyway, so when a certain thing goes from one person to another person, through certain things, okay, I'm trying to understand what this Yiddish is saying. I mean, this is kind of brutal. Oh man, what is this Yiddish talking about? I mean, I think I understand what it's saying, but I don't really understand. One thing goes from one person to another person, durch was, through which, man, one day I got to make this website that just translates the Yiddish. I mean, I think I understand, but okay, I think I understand what it's saying, but it might be slightly off. Okay, when someone gives something to another person, or no, when I think it's saying, oh man, no, when something goes to one domain to another domain through selling, giving, or conquering in a war, then the essence of the thing is not is not changed. Okay, I think I understand it. When something goes from one domain to another domain through selling, giving, or conquering, the actual thing itself is not changed. Okay, yeah, I do get it. The thing itself still didn't. The thing itself, meaning that the object itself, did not like get any new status, or did not change its essence itself. It did not have any more relationship to one person over the other. Rather, it's just that through one of these acquisitions, like giving, selling, or conquering, then the people agree that it should belong to them. This is the yeah, okay. So kind of understand, but no, it's pretty simple. Just I'm not sure the language. No, it's saying that when someone gives or sells or conquers something, the thing itself does not actually change, and the thing itself does not have any more connection to one person over the other. It's just that the people, through those methods of acquisition, agree amongst themselves that the thing should belong to whoever acquired it through the legal means. So that's what happens usually. The thing itself doesn't change; it just goes from one domain to another thing, but it's still the same thing. And the only thing that changed is just the perspective of the people who have the laws. Essentially, they agree. Okay, once this person acquired it legally, then they could keep it. But the thing itself, it doesn't actually change. It's just a thing. It doesn't actually change. But different is, however, the conquest of the land of Israel. This is the conquest of the land of Israel. Is not just a regular acquisition where just the ownership changes, but the thing itself doesn't change. Rather, it's different, which I have to learn more Yiddish better. Which the Jews had taken the 7 lands of the nations. Is when the Jews took the 7 lands of the nations. Then there came a complete change in the essence, in the essential nature of the land itself. Meaning, when other nations conquer lands, the land itself doesn't change. It's the same land, it's just that the people agree that they should be bound by certain laws, and they agree, okay, it was rightfully conquered. But when the Jewish people conquered the land of Israel under the directive of the Creator, in the times of Joshua and through the Creator's gift, etc., then the actual essence of the land itself changed. Before, it was a land that was equal to all the other land. There's nothing unique about the land of Israel. It was even though the land of Israel still had holiness at the time, but that holiness was not the holiness of Israel at the time. It was just a holiness. It was not specific holiness. Meaning there were certain commandments that the Jewish people were given in the land of Israel that apply only in the land of Israel. So even though the land was still holy, but it did not have the holiness that would allow it to have these certain unique commandments. All the lands were essentially the same. Before it was just a regular land that was equal to all the other land, which had and the land essentially belonged to could have belonged to anyone who purchased it or conquered it, etc. It was just like regular lands. That lands could be conquered, lands could be given, lands could be bought. It was just like one of the other lands, and but when the Jewish people conquered the land, then the land itself became only the land of Yisrael. The land itself went through a change. Then it became a Jewish land through and through, meaning it became fully a Jewish land forever, and automatically, forever, eternally, it changed. Such in a way that this can no longer belong to anyone else, because the actual land itself essentially changed. Like it says, when the enemies tried to conquer the land, it says in one of the parts of the Torah, it says, when the Jewish people were kicked out of the land because of their later sins as well, which it says, but it says the other nations did not actually get to use the land because the land was just barren. Meaning, like, there were certain times when the Jewish people were kicked out of the land, but the nations who tried to kick them out, they couldn't even use it because the land itself became barren then. So, the point is that the land itself is only a Jewish land and it cannot belong to any other land. In truth, the land can never become taken away from the Jewish people, ever. And therefore, even at the time of the exile, where the Creator kicked the Jewish people out of their land temporarily because of their sins, even then, even in the exile, when we were exiled from our land and we were distanced from our soil, but still, it's still called our land. Like it says, we were exiled from our land and we were distanced from our soil. So even after the Creator decided the Jewish people should be exiled, it still belongs to them forever. It's still called our land and our soil. Our land and our soil. And even more. And the other nations are forbidden to settle in the land of Israel, essentially. They could like conquer the land, but they can't actually settle in the land. When the other nations tried to settle it, the land just became barren. So they can't actually settle in the land. They could only like temporarily like have a conquest in it. So the Torah starts the scripture, it says it's supposed to be read by like a 5-year-old first, and the commentator of Rashi is meant to be like what a 5-year-old learns. So it says when a 5-year-old starts learning the Torah, then the 5-year-old learns the simple meaning of the verses, which says in the promise that the land was given to Abraham, it says that the Canaanite nations started living there in the times of Abraham. But then the Creator said, "Oh, don't worry, it's only going to belong to them for a little bit. But the 4th generation of Abraham's descendants will return here to the land." And then it says, "To your descendants, I have given this land." Then the 5-year-old already knows that it belongs to the Jewish people forever. What is this talking about? I'm not exactly sure what this is talking about. Is this related to the same thing we're saying here or something else? Wait a second. Okay, there's like 5 different verses. Okay. Whatever. Well, maybe we'll see what this is talking about. Maybe not. But the point is, apparently, a different proof that we're saying is that in the simple reading of the verses that even a 5-year-old learns, it says clearly that in Genesis chapter 15 in verses 16 and 18, as well as chapter 16 in verse 15, that which I'm not sure what that was talking about, but I guess we could look it up later. That it says that the 4th generation of Abraham's descendants will return there. At the time of Abraham itself, it was conquered by the Canaanites, but don't worry, the 4th generation will return here, and maybe we'll get back to this, maybe not. And in this itself consists the claim of the other nations of the world when they say that you're thieves for conquering the land of the 7 nations. Because obviously conquering through a war is not considered theft, even according to the other nations. But they still call the Jewish people thieves. Also, the nations of the world know that only the Jewish people were given the entirety of the 7 lands of the 7 lands. The lands were land of nation. The lands became the land of Israel forever, eternally. In such a way that the land can no longer belong to any other nations, to the other nations. So they already know that, and because of that, because they know that, that's why they claim that you're thieves. Since that the so it says really the other nations know that the Jewish people have the land forever, but they still claim it was stolen because the Jewish people, through conquering it, they took it out of the category of being able to belong to anyone else, and they changed the essential nature of the land such that it could only belong to the Jewish people forever. And the nations are claiming that act itself is the theft, not the actual act of taking it, but the act of making that the land should never be able to ever belong to other people because of its essential nature being changed. They're claiming that was the theft. And in this comes the answer. So that's the claim they have. Okay, how could it be? They're claiming like, oh, it's not. They're kind of like whining, like, oh, it's not fair. Like, how could it be that the land itself will have its nature change forever, such that only the Jewish people can settle there, and if other people try to settle there, then the land goes barren, and it just doesn't belong to them forever? How could it be that the Jewish people essentially changed the nature of the land forever? Really, and the answer is because all of the land belongs to the Creator, and He created it. Meaning, since the Holy One, blessed be He, since that the Creator had created it and made the entire existence of all reality, it's understood that, or it automatically happens that the entire world, or it's understood that the entire earth belongs to Hashem. Not only the land of Israel belongs to Him, but the entire earth and the entire existence of reality belongs to Him. That the entire world, that this means not, it says, not only does the entire quantity of the land belong to the Creator, but even the entire quality of the land, meaning the entire status of the world, even the deepest levels of the world, of the essence, even the essence of existence belongs to Hashem. In this, then in that, all that is the Creator, and belongs to the Creator. Not only the entire quantity of the land, but even the entire quality and even the essence of the thing itself in the deepest possible way. And since that's the case, he has the right to change the essence of the land. He has the right to change the land, which was previously the land of the nations, and he's able to make it such that it should belong eternally to become a land of the land of Israel. So the nations are claiming, oh, how could it be that the Jewish people stole the land such that they made it that it's only the land of Israel and it can never belong to other nations? No, because it's the Creator. It's not only the Creator of the actual, and not only the owner and the creator of the actual physical land or the quantity of the land, but He owns the entire concept of existence itself. So He has the right to change the existence of land from one existence to a completely different existence. Not only did He give the land to us, but He internally changed the nature of the land of Israel such that it's only possible to ever belong to the Jewish people because of its essence, because He owns not only everything in existence, but He owns the concept of existence itself. We can also explain what it says. Why does Rashi say, that's why it says, like Rashi says, that the Creator owns the entire earth, even if the claim that they said was only regarding the essence of claiming was only regarding conquering of the land of Israel. Since the entire land belongs to the Creator, therefore it's all in His domain, even after it was given to them. Wait a second, I'm not sure what that's actually answering. What is that you're trying to answer? I think that was answering something else. That wasn't even part of what we were saying. Okay, I'm not sure if that really fits with the end of what we're saying. That was really trying to answer something that was in the middle of what we were saying. Okay, whatever. We'll get back to that. So this is note 37, which is after this whole thing. According to what it says, we can understand what the Rambam, the Maimonides, says in the laws of Teruma in the middle of his book called the Mishnah Torah. It says that the lands that King David conquered outside of the land of Canaan, even though he was a king of Israel at the time, and he conquered those lands according to the great supreme Jewish court, but they're not considered the land of Israel, meaning David also conquered these other lands called Syria, or in Hebrew, Surya, which I'm not sure if that actually refers to the actual Syria nowadays. But King David conquered other lands, not part of the covenant of the Jewish people. He conquered other lands, but they were not considered part of the land of Israel completely, because he conquered them before all of Israel was conquered. But if he would have conquered all of Israel and afterwards conquered those lands, then everything would have been Israel at the time. So King David essentially had to conquer the land from other people, even though it was given to the Jewish people forever, but it wasn't like fully conquered yet. So when King David, I have to learn the story more in depth, but apparently based on this note, it's saying that King David, again, the entire land of Canaan was given to Abraham, but then in the times of Joshua, they tried to conquer it. And apparently, I guess something happened where they didn't fully conquer it yet until later on in King David's kingdom. But apparently, at first, King David, before conquering the entire land of Israel, he also conquered other stuff. But if he would have conquered the entire land of Israel first, then any other land he would have conquered would have been part of Israel as well. And it's saying, why is that? Because seemingly, since the holiness of the land of Israel is also in the lands that are outside of Canaan, if they're conquered for the sake of all of Israel, so the conquering of King David should be considered like a conquering of the many of the Jewish people. Whatever, this is kind of complicated, but we'll just get to it. So, what does it make a difference if we conquered it all before? So, the point is that Rambam says that the reason why these lands of Syria were not considered Israel is only because King David conquered them before he conquered the entire land of Israel. But if he would have conquered the entire land of Israel first, then he could have also conquered other lands, and those other lands would have been part of Israel. But the fact that he did them before, just the time frame is what makes it that they're not Israel. So that's the question. Why is it that only the time frame of when he conquered the lands is what makes the difference whether they're Israel or not? Whether it's before he conquered all of Israel or after, that's essentially the question. Because the holiness of the land of Israel is not because of conquering only, rather and mainly is because the Creator gave it to us. And the Creator is the one who owns all of existence, who could change the nature. And therefore, the lands that were conquered after King David conquered the entire land of Israel, they are included in the promise of the Creator, where it's throughout the Torah and the book of Deuteronomy, etc., where it says like these lands should be for you, and for you I have given these lands in the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Joshua, Deuteronomy 11:24 and the book of Joshua 1:3, and they are so those lands that were conquered after the entire land was conquered, they're already included in the promise of the Creator, where it says I have given them to you, and they are like the land of Israel that Joshua conquered for all matters. But not so the lands that were conquered before the entire land was fully conquered, since the conquest was only not according to the Torah law that King David did, even though they were acquired based on the acquisition of war, they're not like Israel. So essentially, King David conquered some lands, not based on the Torah's promise, but because of just the concept of conquering land. People can conquer land if they want through war, but it wasn't. King David didn't act according to the Torah's promise of first conquering all of the land of Israel and only afterwards. If he would have acted according to the Torah law of first conquering all of Israel, then the other lands would have been included in the promise that the Creator gave to the entire land of Israel. I actually have to learn the story of King David more in depth to fully explain it, but apparently something about the fact that the point is that there's a difference between conquering through war and conquering through the Creator's promise. When the conquering is just because of laws of war, then it doesn't really become land of Israel. It's only like kind of quasi-Israel kind of thing, but doesn't have the full status of Israel. But if it's conquered after the whole land of Israel is conquered, then other things are added to it. Then for some reason, which I'm still not exactly sure why, but apparently based on what it says here, then that's considered part of the original promise that the Creator gave in the Torah somehow. And I guess there's certain limitations on that, but I'm not sure what exactly it, or maybe not. But I'm not sure exactly. The point is that first, all of the land has to be conquered, and then afterwards, the other parts could be included in the promise. But a regular conquest of war does not fully make it into Israel. Only if it's done like with the whole Israel is conquered first, according to. Okay, wait, I'm not exactly sure about this part. Whatever, we'll get back to it one day. Okay, paragraph 8. However, even or also this explanation where it said the entire land belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He, even the essence of existence, so that He could change it forever, is also not completely enough to nullify the claim when they say that they're thieves. Even though we said, oh, well, the whole land, not only quantity, but also the quality of existence belongs to the Creator. He could change the existence of land. But apparently that's not enough, somehow. When the claim of your thieves for conquering the land of the seven nations would consist is only that itself, that you've conquered the seven nations lands, then if the Jews would have only taken the seven lands of the seven nations, a land which actually belonged previously to them, then it would be understood that okay, let's understand this for a second. Okay, if they would have only taken it from the seven nations, the land that belonged to those seven nations temporarily, then it would have been, in order to nullify that claim, it would have been enough just to say, okay, well, the Creator has the right to give it to us. But the nations are not just claiming that they took it from the seven nations; they're claiming that the Jewish people took it from the other nations as well, because they took it out of the domain from the possibility of the other nations being able to conquer it. It says, but since, however, that the claim from the nations of the world consists in this, that the Jews had taken the land from all of the nations of the world, not just the seven. This means that they had been given a certain merit. That meaning the other nations had wait a second. They all had, before the Jewish people took the land of Israel, all the nations had a certain potential merit, a potential right to the land. Just like they had a potential right to all other lands in the world, which they could have acquired through different legal methods. And that merit that all the nations originally had to all the lands in the world, that already existed at the time that the whole world was created. That all nations could potentially buy land or conquer land, etc. And that initially, this is it was created in a way that the land was initially created in a way that it could later belong to any one of the nations. So it comes out from this that the merit that the other nations had, the potential merit they had to the land, was not something that was given to them. Rather, it's just something that they had initially, automatically, when, at the time that the land was created. Meaning that at the time that the land was created, all the nations of the world were not specifically given a unique status of land. It's just all nations could, based on how the land was created, they could conquer it, or they could buy it, or sell it, or whatever. So, but when the Jewish people came along, it's different. So that's why the other nations of the world, meaning not the Canaanite nations, but the other nations, are claiming that the Jewish people stole it, not only just from the Canaanite nations, but they're claiming the Jewish people stole it from all of the nations. That's why they're claiming you're thieves. It says, how could it be that the Jewish people took away the rights that the other nations have to the land, just like they had because of the essence of the land at the beginning of creation? And in order to nullify this claim, Rashi adds the words, he created it and gave it to who it is befitting to give it to in his eyes. That the Creator immediately, at the time that he created the earth, or the land of Israel, at the immediate time that he created it initially, he created it and gave it at the same time. He gave in his own thought to who it's befitting to give it to in his eyes, which means Israel. Meaning, like, even in the initial beginning, meaning part of the answer is that even at the initial time of creation, at the immediate moment when the Creator made the land, he initially created it and gave it in his thought, meaning the potential he gave it, the intention that he had when he created the land was to give it to the Jewish people. Because only the Jewish people are called his nation. That's what it says, that he gave it to his, befitting to give it to in his eyes. And so the merits that the other nations had previously for Israel is not because of the essence of the existence of the land, rather only because afterwards he chose to give it to the other nations, meaning and this, that he gave it to them, he also has the right to take it from them and give it to us. Meaning, like, even at the initial beginning of creation, the land was originally intended for the Jewish people. So in order to allow the other nations to be there, in the meantime, there had to be a unique will to give it to them in that meantime. So the right that they had, the potential right they had to the other nations had to the land of Israel at the time, was not because of the essence of the existence of the land itself, just like the other lands were created to initially be bought and sold, but really it was initially intended for the Jewish people. So the only reason why they had the temporary right to the land is only because the Creator had a unique, specific will to temporarily allow them to have it. But since the original nature of the land was really for the Jewish people, then the Creator later rightfully took it from them and gave it to us, because the initial time of creation, the nature of the land was different. However, here it consists of a different question on the other side. If initially, at the time of the creation, the Creator had given the land of Israel to who was befitting to in his eyes, meaning the Creator thought about giving it to the Jewish people already, this means that he had created all of the land of Israel at the time that he created all of land Israel. So, which the essence of the land is removed completely from the merit of all the other nations. So it comes that with this, which he later gave it to them temporarily. Why did he had chas shalom he, like, so to speak, took away the right to the Jewish people at the time. Because really, if he created the land for the Jewish people at the time, then, like, when he gave it to them, then he had so to speak uprooted chas shalom the I think, I'm not sure what this word means exactly. He had, but yeah, saying, like, really, maybe seemingly he kind of, like, took away the essence of the merit they had to the land, which is because he gave it to them, and since that, we can't say that the Creator really took it away from the Jewish people completely when he gave it to the other people. So really, it's so the nations are claiming that it can't be. I mean, it's kind of just what it's talking about. It's brutal because we can't say that. Oh man, this is kind of brutal. I have to actually read this. You know, Yiddish is kind of brutal sometimes. Okay, brutal. I was saying the nations are claiming that. How could it be that at the initial time of the creation we'd say, "Oh, he gave it to us befitting to in his eyes," if he clearly gave it to someone else in the meantime? Whatever. It's kind of hard to understand the details, but I think the main part of the claim. Yeah, someone said take a water break. Maybe I will. Essentially, the main part of the claim is like the main part of the question is essentially like, oh, what? Like if you meant to give it to the Jewish people initially, like, why exactly is he taking it? Why exactly did he give it to the other people at all? And for some reason, that's kind of hard to understand with the Yiddish. That somehow adds to the claim of the nations a lot more than we thought it would initially, for some reason. But the point is, like, the Creator initially in thought gave the land to the Jewish people at the time of creation, and he had to have a unique will, so to speak, to even allow the other nations to live there at the time. And the only reason why the other nations had the right to live there was only not because of the nature of the land itself, like other land was created to be initially bought and sold, but since at the time of creation the Creator intended to give it to the Jewish people, so the only reason why the other nations could temporarily live there was only because of the will of the Creator. But then that will later give it to us. But the nations are still claiming something about, like, oh, why did he give it to them in the first place? I'm pretty sure that's the question, but exactly the details of how that adds to the question, I'm not so sure about. But the main part of the question is, if they intended to give it to the Jewish people initially, then why give it to them in the meantime? That's the main part. Someone is asking in the comments, where am I from? I'm from a lot of places. That's the main thing. Right now I'm in New York, believe it or not. It's hot, but it's good. So I think the main point of the question is the Creator intended to give it to the Jewish people at first, and he later did. But in the meantime, he gave it to the nations. So for some kind of complicated reason, there's some other things. But the main point of the question is, why did he give it? I mean, the main part of the claim of the other nations is, why did he give it to the other people in the meantime? Is the main thing. Therefore, Rashi stresses, with his will, he gave it to them, and with his will, he took it from them and gave it to us. The same will, the first will, means that the same, just like the second and his will. mean, that's why Rashi repeats the word with his will. He gave to him with his will. It's kind of like repeating the same thing, but it's trying to stress the same. It's the same will. Why is that important? This means the Creator is initially. Everything was initial with his will. That the meaning like with the Creator's same will, the entire point of why the Creator gave it to them is only that it should come back and be given to us. But the giving it to them is part of giving it to us, as it's going to explain maybe. That it should become the land of Israel in actuality first by going to them. It should only truly become the land of Israel in actuality if it was first belonged to the nations. Meaning, like, the whole reason why he gave it to them is not like some, it's not like he's nullifying his earlier. I think that's what I was saying earlier. It's not like if he was giving it to them, the nations would think, oh, well, maybe if he's giving it to them, that means that he's trying to nullify the earlier thought that he had to give it to the Jewish people. Okay, he wanted to give it to the Jews, but when he gave it to them, when he gave it to the other nations, then they would think maybe the Creator is kind of like changing his mind, kind of thing. It's like a different thing altogether. I think that's what the question was saying. But saying no, the reason why he gave it to them in the first place is only a step into giving it to us. That the true way it could become the land of Yisrael is only if it's first given to the nations of the world, as it's going to explain properly, hopefully. Und der Tam the roof is, and the reason for this is why. What's the reason that in order for it to become Israel, it should first be given to the nations? Because it went up in the will of the Creator that specifically from a land of nations, then the Jewish people should, through their service, transform it in and flip it over into the land of Israel. Someone in the comments asked, where does the name Israel comes from? The name Israel comes from the Torah in the book of Genesis, where Jacob is says that he was fleeing from his brother Esav, who was trying to get him, and then he took all of his stuff over a river, and then he forgot something at the other side of the river, and then he went back to get that little thing, and then when he got back there, he saw the angel of Esav that he was trying to run away from. I mean, he was trying to run away from his actual brother Esav, but he saw the actual angel of Esav, and they fought for a long time. They wrestled, and they had like a lot of dust and stuff. It was like a big wrestling match with an angel that lasted for a long time, and Jacob pretty much won. And because of that, then the angel said, like, oh, your name is going to be called Israel, which means you have, so to speak, defeated, or you have wrestled with the Creator, kind of thing. I mean, the angel was not the Creator, but like you've wrestled with like the messengers of the Creator, kind of thing. That's essentially what the word Israel means, and other things as well. That's the source of it. Anyway, so they should transform the land of Israel from the land of nation. So it says the will of the Creator was that specifically through the land of the nations, it should become the land of Yisroel, the land of Israel, a holy land. It says it in the Zohar. It says that if the land would not have been given to the Canaanite nations at first, then the land would not have been the inheritance of the Holy One, blessed be He, apparently. So something about the fact that the Canaanite nations had it first, that's what made it a holy land, because when it was transformed later. Can't Israel mean reign or rule of too? Yeah, rule over or wrestle, essentially, yeah, similar. Is therefore understood as that Nasnal, that when he gave it to them, that's not contradicting his earlier thought of initially wanting to give it to us. Meaning, I guess the earlier thing he was saying is that the nations are claiming that, oh, okay, you're saying that he wanted to initially give it to the Jewish people, so why did he give it to the other nations? Maybe that was trying to nullify his earlier thought. And that's why they're claiming it was theft, because, oh, Yeah, sure, he wanted to give it to them, but then he actually didn't. So maybe when they got it back, maybe that was just stealing. But no, saying because that's not nullifying his earlier thought. Um, the fact that he gave it to them is not nullifying the thought of giving it to us, nor the opposite. It's only the opposite. With the giving to them, it became completely fulfilled the intention of the giving to who is befitting to give it to in his eyes, which is us, that the lands of the nations, Jewish people should turn into the land of Israel. So the whole point of having the holiness of the land of Israel is only through the land first belonging to the nations. As we didn't really explain why yet, but we're going to say, hopefully. According to this, maybe we'll say why, maybe not. According to this, it could also be understood why in the Torah it's we don't only see, in the book of Genesis, it doesn't only talk about the creation of the world, which talks about how the land belongs to the Creator. This is another question we had. Why does the book of Genesis even exist in the Torah? It talks about, okay, we need to know the world is created, to know that the Creator made the world and He could give it to us, etc. But why do we need to have all the other parts of the Torah as well in the book of Genesis, which talk about the stories about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and other stuff? So, rather, oich alle andere parshes. Why do we have all these other passages which are all the way until the middle of the book of Exodus, where the Jewish people leave Egypt? Why do we have all of that? It's other stuff. Since through all these other passages, it will be understood that this which the Creator had given the land of Israel to who is befitting to give it to in His eyes is immediately when He created it. Meaning, like, through the other parts of the Torah, we see how the intent of it, the land belonging to the Jewish people, was the original purpose of creation. How we'll see, and that He gave it to the fact that He gave it to them is only in the middle of is only like a middle step in accomplishing the entire will, which is giving it to us. So the point is that, okay, Rashi says we need to know that the Creator made the world, so we know that He owns the world, so we can give it to us. But why do we need to know about these other parts of the book of Genesis and the book of Exodus in the beginning, which are just like stories? So it's saying here that these other stories are really explaining how the initial plan from the original moment of creation was to give the land to us, and as we're going to see, maybe how. Possibly. Just like in regards to the general creation of the world, we learn, the Torah teaches us immediately in the beginning, the words, in the beginning, He created it. That the creation is for the sake, okay, so this is a different explanation in Rashi, that when it says, in the beginning, He created, the word bi means in, but it could also be short for another word, bishvil, for the sake of. So it also could mean that for the sake of the beginning, Rashi says the beginning. So simple meaning is it says in the beginning He created the world. But really it can also mean for the sake of something called the beginning did He create the heavens and the earth. And that thing that's called the beginning is the Torah, which is called the beginning of His way, and the Jewish people, which are called the beginning of His planting. So it says, for the sake of these beginnings, for the sake of the beginning, which is the Torah and the Jewish people, did He create the heavens and the earth. That the creation is for the sake of the Torah, that's called the beginning, and for the sake of Israel, who are called the beginning. And even though they are, nevertheless, it was until the Jewish people became a nation, until the giving of the Torah, when they actually became the nation of Israel, there were a lot of things that happened in the world which were not so good according to the Creator. Like, meaning, like, the Creator created the whole world just to have the Jewish people in the Torah, fulfilling the Torah. But there was also a lot of other stuff that happened in the world, which says we're not really befitting for the Creator, kind of thing. So why did all that happen? Because this is such went up in the will of the Creator that the pearls should be taken out from the sand. If you have a lot of sand, you can have a lot of sand, but only one pearl. So the Creator wanted not just to have pearls, to have only pearls, but he wanted to take out a pearl from the sand. So the pearls is like the Jewish people taking from the sand from the other generations that the Creator didn't really want, kind of thing. How many viewers do we have now? 6. All right, welcome people. And such is also in relation to the land of Israel. So just like this idea of taking the Creator wanted to not only just have pearls, but to take the pearls out of the sand. So just like that exists in the whole creation, it's also in relation to the land of Israel. This which he gave it to who was befitting to give it to in his eyes is in the thoughts of the Creator immediately at the time of the creating of the world. Meaning, like, the Creator initially wanted to eventually give it to the Jewish people at the point of creating. Just like the Creator made the world, when the Creator made the world, he created it for the sake of the Torah and for the sake of Yisrael, even though the Jewish people only existed thousands of years later. So too, when the Creator made the world, he initially wanted to give it to the Jewish people, but he didn't for a while, until that afterwards. Is given. That was in the thought of the Creator to give it to the Jewish people immediately at the time of the creation, until that afterwards it should be. So after the initial creation, then we had the other verse about in the passage of Noah, which said that all the nations got scattered out in their lands, each one according to their own language. And the land of Israel came to the descendants of Shem, Noah's son Shem. As we said earlier, that after the flood, Noah gave it to Shem. And also after this, the Torah talks about how the Canaanites conquered the land from the descendants of Shem, in connection to the Creator's promise to Abraham that, don't worry, even though the Canaanites are conquering it from Shem, which was Abraham's great grandfather, but no, or etc. Don't worry, to your descendants, to the descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, which is the Jewish people, to your descendants, I will give this land. In Genesis 12:6, that at the time that the Canaanites had wanted to take the land of Israel from the descendants of Shem who had it before, then the Creator had immediately forewarned this through the Creator talking to Abraham, our father, that he is the fact that the Creator is allowing the Canaanites to conquer it from Shem. The Creator is not nullifying the gift that the Creator originally set it up to be given to the descendants of Shem after the flood. The Creator is not nullifying the fact that the land belongs to the descendants of Shem. Rather, the Creator says to Abraham, "Don't worry, I'm destined to return it to you." So, meaning, like, before the Canaanites finished conquering the land, while they were still in the process of conquering, in verse 6, in chapter 12, verse 6, then even before they finished conquering it, the Creator already said initially, "Don't worry, I'm going to give this land to you." So this is all to say that the initial, like, these other stories of the Torah and Genesis are like talking about how, okay, the Creator initially wanted to give the land to Jewish people, but there's a lot of stuff that happened where the other nations got into their own lands, and the land of Israel came to the status of Shem, and it was later being conquered by the Canaanites. But even after all that, the Creator said to Abraham, "Don't worry, the initial intention for it to be to the Jewish people is still there." Being however that we can thereby ask, So, being that when the Creator gave it to us, it was through first giving it to them. But in this, it could have been enough that the land of Israel should belong to them only a short amount of time. Okay, so really we said, okay, the Creator, just like the Creator, like singled out the Jewish people from the other nations because he wanted to be like picking a pearl from the sand, which has certain advantages as opposed to just having pearls initially. He doesn't really explain why here, but whatever, other places explains why. Like it's better to have light from the darkness as opposed to just have light initially. And so too, he wanted the land of Israel to be first belong to the other people, such that it should first belong to us. But it could have been, maybe he wanted it to just belong to them. It could have just belonged to them for a short amount of time. Why did it have to belong to them for hundreds of years? Why is the land of Israel coming to us only after being by the Canaanites for a lot of years? I think it was like 440 years or something. It could have just been for like 2 or 3 years, but no, it was a lot of years. On this, the Torah comes with an idea of the covenant between the parts, which is this is in this week's Torah parsha, where the Torah singles out Abraham, and he makes a covenant where he tells Abraham to like take all these animals and cut them in half, and then walk between the parts, and then except take a bunch of animals except for a dove. The dove at the end was complete. So like all the other nations were like kind of like half, but the Jewish people, which are like the dove, will be like forever, kind of thing. And then in that covenant, the Creator gave the land of Israel to Abraham forever, and there's a lot of different reasons basically. But point is, the Torah talks about this covenant between the parts. It's called, where Abraham would walk between the parts of these animals. So this is saying this is why we had that covenant between the parts, and in order to make it understood, the will of the Creator, just like it, that it's the will of the Creator that the giving, in actuality, of the land of Israel to the Jews should come specifically after your, like it says in that covenant, it says, your descendants will be a foreigner in a land that's not theirs, and they will be served and they will be afflicted for 400 years, which is essentially, even not only does it refer to the slavery in Egypt, but even when Abraham was in the land of Canaan with Isaac, that was still considered the land that's not theirs at the time, even though it would be given to them. But even when Abraham and Isaac and Jacob were in the land of Israel at the time, it was still considered a land not theirs based on that promise. And through the affliction, then they could get the Torah. And as a continuation to this, then they had the later passages where it's talked about the details, like the decree in when they came down to Egypt, the decree of the Creator that caused them to come down to Egypt, where they were afflicted even more than they were afflicted in Canaan, and afterwards, the story of going out of Egypt, where the Creator had taken out the Jews from Egypt in order to lead them to the good land, to the good and wide land, to the land flowing with milk and honey. So, I mean, it doesn't really explain fully. Maybe it's going to explain it. It doesn't really explain why, but maybe it explains other places. Like, in order for them to get to like receive the Torah and to have the blessings, like they were first afflicted, and through the affliction, then they had the deeper blessings. So the affliction in the times of Abraham was that he should live. I mean, Egypt was obviously an affliction as well, but before that, when they were foreigners in a land not theirs, that was also like the beginning of that. And even though the land of Israel would later become theirs, but at the time the Creator wanted it such that it was not theirs, in order that they should have like the extra afflictions that they get so that gets the deeper blessings later. Because when Abraham was there, it was technically not theirs until later. Okay, it doesn't really say in depth. It doesn't really explain why. What's the advantage of the affliction? That's through that you get to the blessings. But other places explain, like transforming darkness to light kind of thing. Doesn't really say in detail here though. Okay. After all of the above, then So yeah, it doesn't really explain the advantage of why being afflicted is better, but other places say, oh, through the affliction, then they're able to reach the deeper blessings, and then through the land of Israel not belonging to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for a long time, then that added to the affliction, in addition to the affliction of Egypt, and then according to the pain is the reward. But it doesn't really say that here, but other places kind of says it. Whatever. So after all the above, then we come to a different explanation. We require an additional explanation in deeper meanings. It's true that because the Jewish people need to know not only that Jewish people need to know not only how they themselves should act, rather also they need to know how to answer the claim of the nations of the world who claim that they're thieves, it's all land of Israel, etc. They need to know that. Therefore, it says in the Torah, also, all the passages of the book of Genesis until the middle of the book of Exodus, in the first commandment, which was later, which in these things we find the answer for the claim of the nations of the world who said that you're thieves. What's the answer? It's kind of difficult to say that after this okay, we're just trying to understand this. After all this that we said, yeah, it says really after all this, the Torah still is an instruction for the Jewish people's actions. It should be an instruction for their own actions. The Torah is really not really meant to just be like something that we should tell other people to satisfy their opinions. The Torah is meant to tell the Jewish people how they should act for themselves. So it's like what's the point of the Torah, explaining this whole thing just for the Jewish people being able to satisfy other people's opinions? Why do we care about other people's opinions? The Torah is meant to talk about what we should do. Why did the Torah begin with the creation of the world? That the beginning of the Torah is only for the sake of things which is only in order for the Jewish people to know how to answer the nations of the world. Why does the beginning of the Torah talk about the creation, which is only there in order just for us to know what to say to the nations? It's kind of like counterintuitive. Like the Torah is meant to say how we should act. Why do we care about answering to the other people? And only after that, after an entire book of the Torah, we finally start learning our own. And we said earlier that the entire book of Genesis is just in order to answer the claim to the other nations. And only after all that, then finally begins the first passage of when they're leaving Egypt, when they start getting commandments. And only then is the Torah telling the Jews how they should act. So it's kind of weird. Like the whole point of the Torah is to tell the Jewish people how to act. But we're saying this whole thing that, the whole point of the whole book of Genesis is only in order for the Jewish people to answer what other people might think, but it's not really saying how they should act, which is kind of strange. So we need to say, we must say, movement der Versagen. We need to say that the order according to which the Torah is tells us, meaning that first it starts with the creation of the world, and afterwards the other commandments is also a part of Torah. The order of the Torah is also the Torah, and the Torah is a lesson. So even the order of how the Torah tells us things is a lesson. In the order is we can know a lesson, not only any lesson, but a lesson for how. I guess how we can serve the Creator, but this is not what I say. We learn a lesson in regards to the order of how we should learn Torah. The order that the Torah tells us things is not only just telling us stories, and it's not only just telling us lessons, but it's telling us a lesson for how we should learn Torah in general. The ultimate purpose of learning Torah is that a Jew should learn in which way that should learn in such a way that's beyond the world. I'm not sure what that's exactly saying. The ultimate goal of learning Torah is that a Jew should he should learn the Torah in a way that is higher than the world. I'm not sure exactly. Okay, meaning the main part of the Torah is beyond the world, not only in the world. So the ultimate goal of the Torah is to learn the Torah in a way that's beyond the world. We'll see what that means, maybe. Which has no connection to the nations of the world at all. And that's like the ultimate goal of Torah, just to learn the Torah how it is, regardless of how the Torah relates to anything else in the world, including the other nations. Therefore, a Jew who is engaged in Torah is beyond all limitations, is greater than a high priest who enters the temple. There's a concept that there's a part of the temple that had the Ark of the Covenant that only the high priest could enter, only one day a year. It's very special. But it says a Jew who learns Torah is even greater than that high priest, and that's who enters the holiest place in the whole world. But any Jew who learns Torah is greater than that even. But not so the idolaters who but an idolater who learns Torah, which they should learn about, they also could learn about the 7 laws of Noah, which is also part of the Torah, the Noahide laws. But they're only like the same level as the high priest, but not greater, because the Torah that the other people learn is only the part of the Torah that goes into the world, that's related to the world. Meaning there's different aspects of the Torah. One aspect of the Torah is completely beyond the world, and another aspect is the part of the Torah that relates to the world. It tells us how to interact in the world and fix the world. So the parts that the other nations could learn about the Torah, which is the 7 laws of Noah, those are like the instructions of the Creator for how to make a functioning human society. So that's like the part of the Torah that's like telling us how to actually get involved in the world, which is also a good thing, fix the world with its instructions. So that's why they're the same level as the high priest entering in. But the Jew who learns it is beyond the high priest. Because when the Jews learn it, they go to the essence of the Torah that's beyond the world entirely, while the other nations still need to learn the part of it regarding the 7 laws of Noah, which tell us how to interact in the world. And when they do that, then they're equal to the high priest, essentially, but not greater than. And also, this idea is hinted to when it says in the beginning. The fact that the Torah begins when the Torah, okay, this is another idea. The fact that when the Jewish people in the Torah, it starts with the letter Beis, the second letter of the alphabet, but when it was translated into Greek, the rabbis translated it with the first letter of the alphabet. Okay, this is getting into a different thing. Maybe we'll get back to it. Because the reason why the beginning of the Torah is with the second letter of the alphabet, the Beis, when the Jews learn it, because the Torah speaks in a lower okay, whatever. This is kind of anyway. We said it in a different talk that says the reason why the Torah begins with the second letter of the alphabet as opposed to the first, because really the Torah itself goes into a lower world called the world of Bria, the world of creation, which is already the second stage in creation. But there's still a higher aspect of the Torah that's beyond creation, which is the Creator Himself, essentially, which that's the Jewish people connect to the Creator Himself first, and only the second thing they learn is the Torah, how it goes into the deeper levels. But the nations of the world, says when it was translated into Greek for them, then the rabbis made the first letter of the Torah begin with it. The first letter of the alphabet begin in the Torah, because when the nations learn it, they don't need to learn about the extra level of the Creator of the Torah. The first thing they could learn is just understanding the Torah itself in the lower level. I think that's what it's saying, yeah. So when the Jewish people have the other part of the Torah of Atzilus, the world of emanation, which is like the, so to speak, like the creator, then the Torah that goes into the other parts is already the second level, which is the second letter of the alphabet. But when the nations of the world that are related to that have a relationship with the Torah that comes down to fix the world, this Torah is the first thing they're learning, which is anyway. Let's try to finish this. That's a different. Okay, the point is that similar to the commandments of and the instructions from. So the point is that when the Jewish people learn Torah, they're like connecting to the Torah beyond the universe. While the nations of the world also should learn the parts of the Torah like that are related to fixing the world, the 7 laws of Noah, and that's like a lower aspect of the Torah, which is still good to learn because it's part of the world, but it's just not the essence of it, which is what the Jewish people learn. But the point of this is something that hopefully we'll get to, and similar to the commandment. So this idea of learning Torah is similar to the commandments and the instruction, which it says, which happen after the Jewish people become a nation. Then the Creator says, like, okay, the first commandment they get was to sanctify the new month, to make it either 29 days or 30 days, or actually either that or to make sure that the month of Nisan, I think, is always in the spring. I think that's actually a different commandment, which is similar. Whatever. Point is, the language that the commandment uses says that this month should be for you. So that first commandment the Jewish people got uses the word for you specifically, which are, and those commandments that happened from then onwards were only given to were given to the Jewish people as a treasured nation, because that was after the giving of the Torah, a century. As opposed to the other commandments, which were later. I'm not sure where this is going, but we'll see. It's only that in order to come to that level of the later part of the Torah, which is just for the Jewish people, which is like beyond the world, it first requires previously learning of the Torah, which is given to the animal soul, which is like the nations that exist within the Jews. It's like another nation that exists within the Jews. It's like the animal soul kind of thing. So first we learn the lower part of the Torah, which is related more to the world, similar to how the passages which are until the first commandment are those other parts of the Torah before they got the first commandment. Those passages help the Jewish people explain the claim that the other nations of the world had. So too, it says when someone learns the Torah, it says like the first thing they should learn is the lower part of the Torah that is able to elevate their animal soul, so that even the animal soul should recognize the Creator. And afterwards, they can come to the higher level of the Torah, which is the commandments that are beyond the world, kind of thing. And the reason for this is the Torah teaches us and this idea of first learning the lower level of Torah to elevate the animal soul, and afterwards learning the higher level, is the Torah teaches us regarding how the land of Israel was given to us later. That meaning that lesson is hinted to in this whole thing we're talking about, and this is the last paragraph, relatively, plus a few more pages, a few more volumes to go. But we'll understand this by prefacing a statement from the rabbis in the Talmud that a Yiddish kind, a Jewish child, even when he's in the stomach of his mother as a fetus, he's taught the entire Torah, meaning not only the Talmud but also the Kabbalah, and also all the deeper meanings of the Torah, all parts of the Torah, even a fetus knows. And afterwards, when he comes to the era of the world, when he's born, an angel comes and makes him forget the entire Torah. So every Jewish child learns the entire Torah, then he forgets it. But we have a question. Wait a minute. Since the kid forgets the Torah after he's born, then why was he taught the entire Torah before he forgot it? So a Jewish child was taught the entire Torah as a fetus before he was even born. But then he forgets it. So what's the point of learning it if he forgets it? The explanation of this is Torah needs to be by the Jewish people durch limud v'esek, through learning and being actively involved and intense effort, not in a way of just having things for free. Therefore, he needs to forget the light, the light. He needs to okay, I'm not sure what light. I think it means light. He needs to forget the Torah in order that he should later, afterwards, understand through his own effort. But he still learned it in the first place for this reason. Wait a second. Okay, not sure exactly what. It doesn't really explain the reason why he learned it before, but he needs to forget it so he can learn it with his own effort. So similar to an example that we find in the land of Israel, which the Creator had wanted that previously the land of Israel should be the land of the nations, like says he gave it to them first. And the Jewish people, with their work, with their effort, had merited and took the land of Israel and made it into the land of Israel, even though it could have been given to them initially. And this we learn with this fact that we teach a Jewish fetus the entire Torah before he's born, since when the entire learning of the Torah, if someone would only learn Torah with their own effort and nothing else, then a person is only a creation. And specifically, as the soul comes into a body, and in an animal soul, a person is just a limited creation. Not only is the soul a creation, but the body is also a creation. And then if he would only learn the Torah from his own effort, he would only be able to learn as much as a limited creation could learn it. As the Torah is in its limitations in the world and how the Torah relates to the world. This means that if a Jew would only learn the Torah with their own effort, they would only be able to learn the aspect of the Torah that's related to the world, but not the higher aspects. They would only be able to learn the aspect of the Torah which is related to the nations of the world, similar to the land of Israel. That if the relation of the land of Israel to the Jewish people would be, if the Jewish people would have only had the right to the land at the time of the actual conquest in the times of Joshua, and not previously through the fact that the Creator, when he created the universe, intended in his thoughts to give it to who is befitting to give it to in his eyes at the time of creation, is true that they still would have acquired the land, because anyone can conquer land and acquire it. They still technically would have acquired it. However, then the acquisition would not be completely forever, and it would not completely exclude all of the other nations from later acquiring it. As we said, that when the Jewish people conquered it through the Creator, that changed the essential nature of the land, that it's never possible for anyone else to ever be able to conquer it. Like other nations tried to settle there, and the land just went barren because the land would not accept anyone else living there. So the nature of the land, forever, eternally changed once the Jewish people conquered the land through the Creator. So if the Jewish people really said earlier that first of all, anyone can conquer land legally, and that becomes a real acquisition because land can be conquered through war. That's just the way things work. But if the Jewish people's connection to the land would have only been through the war in the times of Joshua, then that would not completely exclude the rights of the other nations as well. But as we're going to see, as we said earlier as well, the main part of the point of the conquering the land of Israel to the Jewish people was not just through legal methods of conquering, just like anyone could conquer land, but because the Creator, at the time, at the original time of creation, intended to give it to the Jewish people. So when the Jewish people actually conquered it through the Creator giving it to them, then the actual essence of the nature of the land forever changed, such that it's never possible for anyone else to ever acquire it. Because the Creator, and he said earlier, because that's why the Creator is the master of not only the world, but he's also the master of all existence. And he has the power to change not only can he change the ownership of land, but he can also change the actual existence of the land itself. So because the land was conquered through the Creator, through the help of the Creator, and through the initial intention of the Creator, to give it to them at the time of creation, then it's not just like regular acquisition that just could belong to anyone, but it's literally like the Creator himself, changing the essential nature of the land to give it to the Jewish people. Yeah, basically. So if they would have just conquered it on their own, then that would not completely exclude the other nations from to have a little bit of a potential merit in the land of Israel. Okay, maybe you think, okay, if the Jewish people conquered it, even if they would have conquered it legally, but the other nations say, oh, maybe we should just like have like a potential little part of the land here and there. But no, really, they don't have any right to the land at all, as we're going to see. And therefore, the Torah teaches us so the Torah also teaches us regarding a fetus who, even when he's still in the stomach of his mother, this means that while the soul is, so to speak, in like a pregnant state, or in an impregnated state, in the spiritual universes, before it fully comes down to this world, before it becomes a creation. Meaning the soul, we thought really, okay, the soul is really a creation, but no. When someone is a fetus, their soul is still connected to the Creator, and in a way that's beyond creation. Before the soul even becomes a creation, while it's still united with the Creator in the realm of one being a fetus, then the way that he was learning the Torah is without limitations of a creation. Meaning, we're saying even a fetus in the mother's womb learns Torah. But it says when someone is a fetus, they're not even a creation yet. They're still united with the Creator. And when they're learning, and it says that the Creator teaches that fetus the entire Torah. So when the fetus learns the Torah, they're not just learning it like a creation learns the Torah, but they're learning it like the Creator learns Torah, because that soul as a fetus is still united with the Creator and not a creation yet. And it becomes es wird im gegeben die Torah, and then it's given to that fetus the Torah like it is, without any limitations, like the Creator would learn the Torah, so to speak. And through this, then the Jew has the power, even after they become a creation, that after he learns Torah in this world, as he learns Torah with his own efforts in this world, then after that, it should shine into that Torah, into every level of the Torah that he learns. Then it should shine into that Torah he learned in this world, the Torah that he already learned in the other worlds of being united with the Creator. And then even in this world, he should have that revelation, which is beyond limitation. So if a person would only learn the Torah based on their own effort, then they would only be able to access the aspect of the Torah that's related to the other nations of the world, which is a part of the Torah that's meant to like fix the world and make a functioning human society, etc. But they would not access the unlimited aspect of the Torah that's beyond. But because a Jewish fetus learns the Torah even before they become a creation, while they're still united with the Creator, then even after a Jew becomes a creation, then as they learn Torah in this world, they're able to have that original Torah they learned shining through all the Torah they learn in this world, and they're able to see infinite within the finite as well. And this is also similar to the land of Israel. But Dugmas Eretz Israel, similar to the land of Israel, that therefore, the fact that the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people in thought at the original time of creation is initially, before it was given to anyone else. The Creator first thought about giving it to the Jewish people. Immediately at the beginning of creation, therefore, that initial gift the Creator had in His thought when He intended to give it to the Jewish people, that initial thought gives the power to the Jewish people even when they conquer it in this world, after the world was actually created, and after the Jewish people were in the world. At the time they actually conquer the land of the seven nations, they have the power from that original thought of the Creator giving it to them at the time of creation. That through that, it should become the land of Israel in such a way that is completely removed from the nations of the world. Any possible, or it's completely removed from the nations, any possible merits on it, even a potential merits, meaning no other nations could ever any remote connection to the land of Israel ever at all. Meaning, if it would have just been conquered legally by the Jewish people, then it would still be theirs, because war can conquer things, but it would not completely nullify the claims of the nations entirely and forever. But they were initially intended to give it to them at the beginning of creation, and then the whole reason why He did not was just in order to give it to them later. So when they actually, in order to take a pearl out of the sand, like we said, so when they actually conquered it later, then it's like they have in that conquest the power of the Creator from the beginning of creation, essentially. And that's such that no one else could ever have any possibility of having any relation to it. Mentioned above, He gave it to who was befitting to give it to in His eyes, and afterwards He gave it to them, and afterwards He took it from them and gave it to us. It teaches us not only the way of learning the Torah, that first we begin learning the Torah as a fetus, when the Creator teaches us the entire Torah from above, and after we forget the Torah, and afterwards we learn the Torah again through our own efforts, until the Torah later and then we start learning the Torah with our own efforts, which could even be not even with good intentions, in some way, I guess. And then only afterwards, then we finally learn the Torah properly, when it shines within the Torah we learn, the light of the Torah, similar to the Torah which we had been taught from above when we were a fetus. Rather, also, so not only does this idea of the first being thought of to give to us, then being given to them, then being taken from them and given to us, not only does it teach us how to learn Torah, or the order of how we learn Torah, which is first it was taught to us fully, then it was forgotten from us, and then we had to learn it with our own efforts, and then only afterwards does it shine within us the full unlimited potential of the Torah. This also teaches us about how the Torah itself works, not only how we relate to the Torah, but what the Torah itself has different levels that are similar to this idea. The Torah on its own is the wisdom of the Creator, is similar to, and that idea that the Torah itself is the wisdom of the Holy One, blessed be He, is how originally the Torah gave it to us, but who was befitting to give it to in His eyes, which which only has a relationship to those who are befitting and good in holiness. So that's the origins of the Torah is only goodness, and it can only relate to that which is goodness. But afterwards, the Torah journeyed down and descended through different levels, and it came down and it brought itself down into the lower universes of the world of creation, which is lower afterwards, and then the world of formation, which is even lower than creation, and then the world of action in the physical world. Then, meaning that there's different parts of the Torah. There's, first of all, there's like the Kabbalah of the Torah, which is like just pure goodness. But then there's also parts of the Torah that are like the part of the law of the Torah. Then there's the parts of the Torah that has all kinds of hints and codes to it. And then there's also the lower level in the world, and then the simple meaning of the Torah is in this physical world, and the other levels of the Torah are in the other worlds. And so it's a journey. It's a journey, basically. Which, with this journey, the Torah is that idea of the Torah journeying down from its place in this only goodness and coming down to these other worlds is similar to the idea that after the land of Israel was originally intended to give it to us, but he first gave it to them. So that's like the exile kind of thing, like the Torah journeying down from its place.